From the dojo to the octagon, this is Budocast, your source for the latest in martial arts news, culture, and competition. From breaking fight results to evolving techniques, we cover it all. Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
So, I want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine dedicating your entire adult life to the art of throwing 8 limbs.
Right.
Hands, elbows, knees, shins, just throwing them with lethal precision. You build your whole identity, your wealth, your global fan base on your ability to knock people completely unconscious.
Yeah, your whole livelihood.
Exactly. And now imagine voluntarily stepping away from all of that. You lock yourself in a cage where striking is completely illegal, and you face a heavier man whose only goal is to rip your joints apart.
It sounds completely crazy when you put it like that.
It does. But tonight, April 8th, 2026, that is exactly the scenario Marlon Chito Vera is walking into.
Yeah, he really is.
And we are looking at a completely fractured yet deeply fascinating combat sports landscape right now. We've got this towering stack of event schedules, recent results, and massive industry shifts right in front of us.
Oh, it's a massive stack.
So the mission of this deep dive today is to really extract the signal from the noise for you. We are going to pull apart fighters completely reinventing themselves on the mats.
This is happening a lot.
Right, and weight divisions turned into chaotic power vacuums by sudden retirements. Plus the surreal economics of modern spectacle fights in front of ancient monuments.
I still can't believe that one is real.
I know, right? And finally, we'll get into the absolute masterclass currently being put on by women's boxing.
So much to get into. And, the word fractured captures the surface of it, sure. But if you look at the underlying mechanics, it is a highly calculated adaptation.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, when you evaluate the specific choices these athletes are making in 2026, you are watching the old guard wrestling with their athletic mortality.
Right.
While a totally new generation seizes control of a very segmented market. The physical realities of combat are basically colliding with the modern economics of pay-per-views and streaming.
And that collision is forcing moves that would have seemed irrational, right?
Exactly. Career moves that would have seemed completely irrational even, 5 years ago.
Well, let's start right there with the irrational, or at least the highly unorthodox, tonight. Hype, Brazil.
Huge card.
It is. It's streaming live on Fubo PPV from the Complexo Tempo Arena. You buy the stream, you settle in, and the main event is a pure submission-only grappling match between Chito Vera and Jean Silva.
Yeah, it's a wild matchup.
Now, if you are listening to this, you likely know that Chito Vera is a former UFC bantamweight title challenger.
A very dangerous one.
Right. Bantamweight means he makes his living fighting at 135 pounds. MMA is his entire brand, and specifically his brand is calculated, standing violence.
He's a striker through and through.
Completely. And suddenly he is stepping onto a mat for a pure Brazilian jiu-jitsu submission-only bout. And he is doing it against Jean Silva, who is a UFC featherweight contender.
Which is a big difference in size.
Exactly. Silva normally fights at 145 pounds. He is naturally bigger, and he just fought Bryce Mitchell to a grappling draw in this exact promotion last month.
So he's got the momentum there.
Yeah, I look at this and I'm genuinely baffled. I wrote down this metaphor in my notes. It feels like a world-class decathlete suddenly announcing they are dropping all other events to run the 100-meter sprint against a dedicated sprinter.
Oh, I like that comparison.
Right, because why would a 135-pound striker risk a pure grappling match against a heavier 145-pound contender right now? Is this like a desperate mental reset to break his losing streak?
Well, I will take that decathlete metaphor a step further, actually.
Yeah.
It is not just running a sprint instead of doing the decathlon.
Okay.
It is running that sprint while wearing a weighted vest.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Because in a grappling-only rule set, Vera's primary equalizers, his shins, his elbows, his timing on counterpunches, they're entirely neutralized.
He can't use any of his best weapons.
None of them. He has to completely rewire his central nervous system to rely on leverage instead of impact. But to understand the why, you really have to look at the psychological trauma of his current record.
Right, because he's on a rough skid.
He is on a 4-fight losing streak in the UFC. And the mental toll that takes on a professional mixed martial artist is, frankly, catastrophic.
I can't even imagine.
When you lose 4 times in a row at the absolute highest level, your confidence doesn't just chip away. It shatters.
Yeah, you must start doubting everything.
You do. Your timing feels permanently delayed. You start second-guessing your own chin. And every time you walk into your gym, there's this heavy, unspoken pressure from your coaches and training partners.
So is this grappling match essentially a desperate mental reset then? Just a way to find a win somewhere, anywhere?
It is a mental reset, sure, but I wouldn't call it desperate. I think it is highly strategic.
Strategic how?
Well, submission grappling has quietly evolved into a psychological safe haven for MMA fighters who are stuck in this exact type of purgatory.
A safe haven.
Yeah. Trying to snap a 4-fight losing streak in traditional MMA means risking further, highly concentrated head trauma.
Which is terrifying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A knockout loss when you are already on a skid can permanently end your career, both biologically due to CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, and contractually with the UFC.
Because they'll just cut you.
They absolutely will.
Yeah.
But a submission-only match, it completely removes the strikes. It removes the concussive damage to the brain entirely.
Right.
It allows a fighter like Vera to stay active, to earn a very real FUBO PPV main event paycheck, and to trigger that competitive adrenaline without the risk of waking up staring at the arena lights.
I hear the logic in that. I really do. But I have to push back a little.
Go for it.
You call it a safe haven, but he is stepping in there with Jean Silva, who is just a killer on the mat. You can't get knocked out, sure, but you can get your ACL torn in half by a heel hook.
That's true.
And that also ends a career, doesn't it?
It does. But, and this sounds harsh, a torn ligament requires a surgeon and 9 months of physical therapy.
Oh.
A severe brain bleed changes the rest of your life.
Oh. Yeah, when you put it like that.
Fighters compartmentalize those risks very differently. To a fighter like Vera, orthopedic damage is a business expense. Neurological damage is an existential threat.
That is a fascinating way to look at it. A business expense.
Yeah. And for Jean Silva, this matchup is equally strategic, you know? He gets to maintain his profile, he leverages his natural size advantage against a bantamweight, and he gets his name at the top of the marquee.
Mutually beneficial then?
Exactly. It is a mutually beneficial economic and psychological scenario.
Okay, I can accept the mutual benefit of the main event, but here is where this hype Brazil card gives me absolute whiplash.
Yeah, the undercard is wild.
It's insane. You look at the rest of tonight's schedule. Right underneath that submission-only main event, the co-main is another grappling match. Former flyweight champion Davison Figueiredo taking on the young phenom Raul Rosas Jr., which is a great chess match. You have the veteran championship experience versus the relentless youth.
I'm really looking forward to that one.
Me too. But then the rest of the undercard is pure, unadulterated bare-knuckle boxing.
It is one of the most stark juxtapositions we have seen in combat sports programming this year.
It is genuinely bizarre. You transition from the highly technical, relatively safe, damage-mitigating art of submission grappling straight into the most visceral, damaging sport on the planet.
Yeah, bare knuckle is not for the faint of heart.
Not at all. We are talking Cicero Coutinho versus Marfio Canaletti, Lucas Silyagin versus Thales Nadriel, Romero Reis versus Ricardo Saddlemare.
Brutal matchups.
And it continues. Matthias Rangel fighting Douglas Mutante, and Leysa Silva fighting Bianca Saddlemare. All bare knuckle.
It's a bloodbath waiting to happen.
Literally. I have to admit, I am confused by the underlying economics here. How does a promotion even balance that kind of audience?
That's the big question.
Right. Like, who is the target demographic for a card that splits itself between intricate ground fighting and bare knuckle brawling?
Well, the promoters are addressing the extreme segmentation of the modern combat sports audience. They are essentially hedging their bets on human physiology.
Okay, unpack that for me. Physiology.
Yeah. They are catering to two completely different psychological appetites. MMA fans will buy the pay-per-view to see the technical chess match of Figueiredo versus Rosas Jr.
Because that's high-level technique.
Exactly. That fight alone is fascinating. Rosas Jr. has incredible fast-twitch muscle response and flexibility, while Figueiredo relies on heavy top pressure and isometric strength.
Right, the grappling fans will definitely tune in for that.
But bare-knuckle boxing, that produces a completely different physiological response from the viewer.
It triggers the fight-or-flight response just watching it, honestly.
Precisely. Let's look at the biomechanics of bare-knuckle boxing to understand why it is on this card.
Let's do it.
When you remove the 10-ounce padded boxing glove, you aren't actually increasing the concussive force to the brain.
Wait, really? People always assume bare knuckle is worse for the brain.
It's a common misconception. In fact, fighters hit the head less hard in bare knuckle because the human hand contains 27 fragile bones that will shatter against a solid skull.
Oh, so they have to hold back on the power to protect their hands.
Exactly. But what bare knuckle does do is instantly increase superficial damage.
The cuts.
The cuts. Without the smooth surface of a leather glove, The raw knuckles act like sandpaper on the opponent's facial tissue. The cuts open up within seconds.
It's just a mess.
It is. And the sound of bone hitting bone echoes differently in the arena. By putting Mathis Rangel and Douglas Mutante in a bare-knuckle bout right before a grappling match, Hype Brazil is capturing the purists who want technical mastery.
And the thrill seekers who want undeniable, immediate, bloody consequence.
You nailed it.
So Vera is stepping away from the chaos to rebuild his psychology, while the promoters inject chaos directly into the undercard to secure the buy rate.
It is a wild dynamic.
It really is. But what happens when the chaos doesn't come from a promoter's matchmaking, but from the top down?
Oh, the power vacuum.
Exactly. What happens when a dominant traditional champion unexpectedly vacates their throne?
It changes everything.
It does. And that leads us perfectly into tomorrow night, April 9th, 2026. We are shifting gears entirely from the mats of Brazil to the Eye of the Tiger boxing event at the Cabaret du Casino in Montreal.
This is a highly significant pressure point for the 168-pound boxing landscape.
Absolutely. We have an undefeated Cuban prospect, Osleys Iglesias, sitting at 14-0 with 13 knockouts.
He's a monster.
He is. And he is facing the Russian fighter Pavel Silyagin, who is 16-0-1 with 7 knockouts. They both stepped on the scale and weighed in exactly at the super middleweight limit of 167.5 pounds.
Perfect on the weight.
Yep. And what they're fighting for is the vacant IBF super middleweight title. That is the International Boxing Federation, one of the 4 major recognized world titles in the sport.
Huge stakes.
And Iglesias's IBO belt, a minor fringe title, is also on the line. But, the actual fighters in the ring are almost secondary to the ghost hovering over this entire division.
The elephant in the room.
We have to talk about why this belt is sitting vacant.
You are referring to Terence Crawford, of course.
I am. Terence Crawford achieves the absolute unthinkable. In September of 2025, he moves up in weight and defeats Canelo Alvarez.
Still hard to believe he pulled that off.
It is the kind of victory that cements a legacy for 100 years. He takes all the belts. He is the undisputed king of the super middleweights.
Undisputed.
And then, mere months later, in December 2025, Crawford announces his retirement.
He just walks away.
He just walks away from the sport, leaving all that gold behind. It feels incredibly Game of Thrones, doesn't it?
It really does.
You have the reigning undisputed king who suddenly abdicates the throne, and instantly all the untested lords of the realm are scrambling for the crown.
The Game of Thrones analogy is fitting, but let's extend it to how the political system of boxing actually functions, because it's all about money.
Naturally.
The crown in boxing isn't just a physical object. It is a vital revenue stream. The sanctioning bodies, the IBF, the WBC, the WBA, the WBO, they act as the taxing authorities of this realm.
They want their cut.
They always want their cut. They collect a percentage fee, usually around 3%, from the purse of every champion who fights for their belt.
Right.
So when Terence Crawford retires and vacates, that throne is empty, which means the IBF is collecting 0 tax revenue at 168 pounds.
Oh, so they are bleeding money, essentially.
Exactly. They're highly motivated economically to crown a new king as fast as physically possible. They don't have time to wait for a superstar to emerge.
They just need a champion on paper.
Right. They look at their rankings, find the top available guys. In this case, Silyagin is the IBF number 7, and order a title fight to get the money flowing again.
That makes perfect sense from the business side, but I have to play devil's advocate for the fan watching at home, Please do.
You are asking the listener to tune into Montreal on a Saturday night to see Osleys Iglesias and Pavel Silyagin fight for a world title.
Yeah.
These 2 guys have roughly 30 professional fights combined. Does a vacant world title fought over by 2 guys with such relatively light resumes compared to a Crawford or a Canelo actually carry any real prestige?
It's a fair question.
Or is it just a manufactured placeholder until the next true generational superstar arrives?
Well, you are touching on the eternal debate in boxing. Does the man make the belt, or does the belt make the man?
Exactly.
But I would actually argue that this specific Montreal matchup is incredibly healthy for the sports ecosystem.
Healthy? Really?
Yes. Consider the alternative. We have seen eras in boxing where a massive star holds a belt hostage for years.
Yes, we have.
Either fighting once every 18 months against hand-picked, overmatched opponents, or hiding behind exclusive network deals that prevent unification fights entirely.
We've definitely suffered through those eras. It's so frustrating for the fans. Right. But here, because Crawford vacated cleanly and decisively, the system is forced to work the way it was originally designed.
The gears are turning.
Exactly. Iglesias is a terrifyingly powerful Cuban fighter with a 92% knockout ratio. He has deep amateur pedigree, which means his footwork and jab mechanics are elite, even if his professional round count is low.
And
Silyagin is highly technical and undefeated. Instead of a stagnant division waiting on one superstar's schedule, we get two hungry, highly skilled athletes putting their undefeated records on the line.
They have everything to lose.
They do. Neither of them has the political leverage or the financial luxury to protect their zero,
They can't sit back and wait for a payday. They have to fight to earn the leverage.
Exactly that. A world title, even a vacant one, is still the ultimate bargaining chip for future multi-million-dollar unifications.
That makes sense.
And when you analyze the undercard that Eye of the Tiger has put together for this Montreal event, you can see how a vacant title fertilizes the entire local boxing economy.
Let's deep dive into that undercard, actually, because reading the list, it is incredibly dense.
It's a pact.
You have Arthur Arslanbek taking on Jimmer Espinosa, Luis Santana fighting Chan Thompson, Leila Baudouin against Victoria Noelia Bustos.
Great fights.
Alexandre Gaumont facing Luke Alonso. Eric Israelian versus Franco Filgueira. And Stefan Fonjo versus Marcos Vazquez Rodriguez. It is a stacked deck.
It really is a deep card for Montreal.
But rather than just listing names, let's look at Arthur Arslanbek versus Jimmer Espinosa. Help me understand why a prospect fight like this matters in the shadow of a world title.
Arslanbek versus Espinosa is the perfect microcosm of the boxing food chain.
How so?
Well, Arslanbek is a Canadian Olympian. He has the backing of the local Montreal crowd, and he has elite amateur mechanics.
But amateur mechanics don't always translate, right?
Exactly. Amateur mechanics don't always translate to the longer rounds and smaller gloves of the professional ranks.
Right.
And Espinosa is a rugged, durable Mexican fighter brought in specifically to test Arslanbek's stamina and his ability to handle interior pressure.
A true test.
Right. Now, when Crawford was champion, the ceiling of the division was effectively sealed shut. But now that the IBF title is vacant and up for grabs in the main event...
Everyone smells blood.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fighters like Arslanbek know that the elevator to the top floor is suddenly operational again.
I love that analogy.
If he cleanly knocks out a durable guy like Espinosa on the undercard, he immediately signals to the promoters and the sanctioning bodies that he's ready to challenge whoever wins the Iglesias-Silyagin main event.
So the whole card has higher stakes.
The entire card operates on the momentum of that power vacuum.
That is a brilliant way to look at it. The retirement didn't kill the division, it forced it to evolve.
Precisely.
We are going to explore the rest of this wild 2026 boxing landscape in just a moment, including some absolute legacy-defining results from earlier this year that set all of this chaos into motion. But before we dive deeper, it's time to acknowledge the brands keeping the dojo running. Before we dive deeper, shout out to our sponsors. First up, Elite Sports, leaders in premium fightwear for BJJ and MMA. Whether you're rolling or striking, they've got gear built to move with you. Check them out at elitesports.com. And if you're a school owner looking to optimize your dojo's performance, you need to check out Lotus by Open Black Belt. It's the ultimate management software for tracking ranks, attendance, and billing. They are currently offering a free trial to our listeners. Streamline your business so you can spend more time on the mats. Visit openblackbelt.com to start your trial today. You can find links for both in the show notes, and if you've got a story, news tip, or question, send it to us at budocast.com.
Okay, we are back. We've talked about the tactical shifts happening tonight in Brazil and the political power vacuum being filled tomorrow night in Montreal.
Two very different situations. Very different. Now, I want to pull the lens back and look at what has already transpired in the first 3 months of 2026.
We have to.
Because the chaos we are analyzing today did not happen in a vacuum, It was entirely set up by a string of massive legacy-defining results from January through March.
Oh, absolutely. If you chart the data from the first quarter of 2026, you are looking at a seismic generational transfer of power across multiple weight classes.
Let's track that seismic activity then.
Sure.
On January 31st in New York, we saw Shakur Stevenson beat Teofimo Lopez by unanimous decision for the WBO, the World Boxing Organization's super lightweight title.
An unbelievable performance.
Earlier in January, Dalton Smith stopped the incredibly dangerous Subriel Matias in the 5th round, also in New York. We saw Raymond Muratalla beat Andy Cruz by majority decision in Las Vegas for the IBF lightweight title.
Another huge upset.
And Emmanuel Navarrete stopped Eduardo Nunes in Arizona to hold the WBO and IBF super featherweight titles.
Those 4 specific fights represent a complete stylistic takeover.
Let's focus intensely on that Shakur Stevenson versus Teofimo Lopez fight, because the mechanics of that clash are fascinating to me.
Let's do it.
I look at that fight like two grandmasters sitting down at a chessboard. Except one player, Shakur, didn't just outplay Teofimo. He systematically suffocated every single one of his opponent's options until there were literally no moves left to make.
That's a very accurate description.
Teofimo is known for his explosive, fast-twitch muscle fibers. He is a dynamic, devastating counterpuncher. But Shakur just nullified him completely. How did he actually do that, physically, in the ring?
Well, to understand Shakur's dominance, you have to look past punching power and focus entirely on ring geometry and footwork.
Geometry. Okay, break that down for me.
Shakur fights from a southpaw stance, meaning his right foot and right hand are forward. Teofimo fights orthodox, left foot forward.
Right.
In an orthodox versus southpaw matchup, the battle is almost entirely decided by who can keep their lead foot on the outside of their opponent's lead foot.
Because that gives you the dominant angle for the rear hand, right?
Yeah, exactly. It aligns your power hand squarely with your opponent's center line while moving your own head off the tracks.
So you can hit them, but they can't hit you.
Basically, yeah. Shakur Stevenson's mastery is his distance management. Teofimo relies on his opponents engaging in a firefight so he can use his explosive reflexes to counter.
He wants you to step in and swing.
Yes. But Shakur refused the firefight. Every single time Teofimo planted his feet and loaded up his hips to throw those dynamic combinations, Shakur was already a half step backwards or pivoting off the center line.
So Teofimo was just throwing at shadows.
Teofimo was throwing punches at empty air. And when you swing at air with maximum force, you expend twice as much energy as you do when you actually hit a solid target.
Because your body has to absorb its own momentum.
Exactly. Shakur would let Teofimo miss, watch him lose his balance, and then punish him with a sharp, blinding jab as Teofimo tried to reset his stance.
It has to be mentally exhausting to fight someone you literally cannot touch.
It breaks a fighter's spirit. It really does. And to your earlier point about the changing of the guard, when you pair Shakur's geometric mastery with what Dalton Smith did to Subriel Matias, the trend becomes undeniable.
Because Matias was terrifying.
Matias was widely viewed as the boogeyman of the division. He fought with terrifying, overwhelming forward pressure.
Just walked guys down.
Right. For Dalton Smith to step into the Barclays Center and surgically dismantle Matias, stopping him in 5 rounds, it requires immense tactical discipline.
Just a masterclass in sticking to a game plan.
It proves that raw aggression and toughness are no longer enough to hold a world title in 2026. The modern fighter is evolving past the previous iteration.
And we saw that evolution on a global scale, too, not just in the U.S.
Oh, definitely.
In the UK, Leigh Wood beat Josh Warrington by unanimous decision in a brutal domestic clash in Nottingham. Sandy Ryan defeated Carla Ramos Zamora. In Liverpool, Brandon Figueroa stopped Nick Ball to take the WBA featherweight title.
Huge win for Figueroa.
Yeah. Jai Opataya defended his IBF cruiserweight title against Brandon Glanton. And perhaps most historically, on February 22nd in Detroit, Claressa Shields beat Franchon Cruz Dezern by unanimous decision to become the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world.
We really have to pause on Claressa Shields, because what she achieved is structurally monumental.
Break that down for us, because the term undisputed gets thrown around a lot in promotional material, but it has a very specific, difficult definition, doesn't it?
Yes, undisputed is not marketing jargon, not in boxing. In the modern four-belt era, to be undisputed means you simultaneously hold the world titles from the WBA, the WBC, the IBF, and the WBO.
All 4 at once.
All 4. Getting all 4 of those rival organizations who actively compete against each other for sanctioning fees. Remember, to agree to mandate a single fight is a political nightmare.
It's a miracle it ever happens.
It really is. So for Claressa Shields to not only navigate those politics, but to physically move all the way up to the heavyweight division and secure a unanimous decision victory.
Against naturally bigger women.
Right. It is a testament to her absolute foundational mastery of boxing mechanics. She doesn't rely on being the bigger, stronger athlete. She relies on superior timing, head movement, and jab placement.
It synthesizes the entire theme of early 2026, really. The fighters succeeding right now are blending supreme technical boxing with a fearless approach to matchmaking.
They aren't waiting around.
No, they aren't waiting for the perfect moment. But, as we pivot from these dynamic, evolving lower and middleweight classes, we have to look at the big boys.
The heavyweights.
The heavyweights. And honestly, looking at the heavyweight schedule, it feels like we are stepping into a time machine.
It's a very different vibe.
Let's look ahead to the massive UK stadium dates coming up. On April 4th, at the O2 Arena in London, we have Derek Chisora versus Deontay Wilder.
Unbelievable that they are still going.
And then, on April 11th, at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Tyson Fury returns after more than a year out of the ring to fight Arslanbek Makhmudov.
The heavyweight landscape, particularly in the United Kingdom, operates on its own unique economic and gravitational pull.
It really does. I look at this division, especially these upcoming UK stadium dates, and I can't help but compare it to a classic rock band on an endless farewell tour.
That's a perfect way to put it.
You know exactly the type of fan. I mean, they constantly tease retirement, they do magazine interviews saying, this is absolutely the last show.
But it never is.
It never is. They always come back for one more massive stadium gig. Chisora and Wilder, these are two veterans who absolutely refuse to step away from the sport.
And just to flesh out that European calendar even more, we also have Conor Benn versus Regis Prograis co-headlining that Fury card at Tottenham.
Right.
And later in April, Callum Smith fights David Morrell in Liverpool, and Lawrence Oakley fights Tony Yoka in Paris. But you are absolutely right to focus on the veterans at the top of the bill.
I want to focus specifically on Tyson Fury returning against Arslanbek Makhmudov.
Okay.
Fury is coming off a full 12-month hiatus, and I have to challenge the conventional wisdom here.
Let's hear it.
People always say heavyweights need rest, but at what point does a year off for a 6'9" giant like Tyson Fury become a severe physical detriment against a heavy-handed killer like Makhmudov?
It's a massive risk.
Are we looking at necessary recovery, or are we looking at dangerous ring rust? Because we've seen heavyweights take a year off and come back looking like they spent 12 months at the pub not healing microtraumas.
Well, it is a massive variable, and you are right to question it. Let's analyze the physiology of a 12-month layoff for a heavyweight.
Break it down.
For a man of Fury's immense size, carrying roughly 270 pounds through grueling 12-round championship fights for over a decade time away is biologically necessary.
Just to heal.
Right. The cartilage in the knees, the micro tears in the shoulders, and most importantly, the central nervous system, they require extended periods to recover from the chronic inflammation of constant training camps.
Okay, so the physical resting of the joints is positive. We can agree on that. But what about the rust? How does a year away affect his actual timing?
This is where it becomes incredibly dangerous for Fury. Makhmudov is not a subtle fighter. He is a massive, aggressive puncher who throws with bad intentions.
He's headhunting.
He is. And ring rust is not primarily about cardiovascular stamina. You can build cardio on a treadmill. Ring rust is about visual processing speed and nervous system response.
Meaning what exactly?
It is about how quickly your eyes track the trajectory of an incoming right hand, process that visual data in the brain, and send the electrical signal down your spine to your feet to pivot out of the way.
Wow. It's the difference between seeing the punch and actually moving in time to avoid it.
Exactly. If Fury's nervous system is even a fraction of a second sluggish from a year of inactivity, he won't be able to slip the punches he used to slip with ease.
And against Makhmudov.
Against a puncher like Makhmudov, a fraction of a second of delay means you are absorbing hundreds of pounds of concussive force directly to the jaw.
Which brings me to Chisora and Wilder. If the physical toll is that high, why are these two guys headlining the O2 Arena?
It's crazy, I know.
Derek Chisora has taken unbelievable amounts of damage over his career. Deontay Wilder is pushing 40. Why do they keep doing this?
To go back to your classic rock band metaphor,
Well,
the band keeps playing because the promoters keep paying them.
just follow the money.
It comes down to the sheer economic power of the UK boxing market. British boxing fans possess a profound, almost tribal loyalty to their fighters,
Especially heavyweights.
particularly heavyweights who show vulnerability and tremendous heart. Derek Chisora has a heavily checkered win-loss record, but he always marches forward, and he always fights until he is physically separated from his senses.
He guarantees violence. You know what you're getting.
He guarantees drama. And Deontay Wilder provides the ultimate variable in sports.
The great equalizer.
Yes, he can be losing every single second of every single round, looking completely outclassed tactically, until he plants his feet and lands the most devastating, biomechanically perfect right hand in the history of boxing.
It really is a terrifying punch.
The torque he generates from his hips through his shoulders is unparalleled. So when you put the narrative of Chisora's relentless heart against the terrifying variable of Wilder's right hand inside the O2 Arena,
The atmosphere is intoxicating.
it is. The promoters know that the nostalgia economy will drive massive pay-per-view buys. The financial incentive makes it almost impossible for these veterans to walk away.
Speaking of the nostalgia economy and intoxicating atmospheres, We have to transition to a trend that is taking those concepts and pushing them to absolute surreal extremes.
Oh boy, here we go.
We are entering what I can only categorize as the spectacle era.
It is a deeply polarizing time for boxing purists.
Polarizing is the polite way to phrase it, honestly. Let's examine the crossover and spectacle fights scheduled for the rest of 2026, because reading the schedule feels like a fever dream.
It really does.
On May 23rd, the heavyweight world champion Oleksandr Usyk is defending his WBC title.
Okay, that part is normal.
That part is normal, but he is defending it against former kickboxing star Rico Verhoeven. And where is this happening? In Giza, Egypt, in front of the literal pyramids.
Aesthetically, and from a global broadcast perspective, it is going to be one of the most stunning events ever captured on camera.
It's unbelievable. And then you look further down the calendar. On September 19th, Floyd Mayweather is fighting Manny Pacquiao in Las Vegas in 2026, over a decade after their first fight.
Oh, wild.
We also have Gilberto Ramirez fighting David Benavidez on May 2nd, which, okay, that is a fantastic traditional high-level matchup.
The palate cleanser.
Right. And on a much more poignant note, Katie Taylor has announced her plan to officially retire after a final summer fight in Dublin. But I want to zero in on Usyk versus Verhoeven.
It requires a lot of deconstruction to understand how we got here.
It really does, because I have to admit, I am completely confused by the underlying economics here. You have a former kickboxing star, Rico Verhoeven, getting a WBC heavyweight title shot against a generational pound-for-pound talent like Oleksandr Usyk, and they are doing it in front of the pyramids of Giza. Who is actually funding this? Has traditional boxing officially jumped the shark into pure Hollywood entertainment, or is Rico Verhoeven actually a legitimate threat in a boxing ring?
Well, to answer that, we have to separate the location economics from the physical matchup itself.
Okay, let's start with the location.
The location, the pyramids of Giza, is not being driven by traditional pay-per-view models. It is driven by regional tourism boards and sovereign wealth funds utilizing sports to elevate their global cultural footprint.
Oh, I see.
It intentionally evokes the historical resonance of Muhammad Ali fighting George Foreman at the Rumble in the Jungle in Zai, or the Thrilla in Manila.
Big iconic moments.
Exactly. By taking the fight out of a standard indoor arena in Vegas or London and placing it at a wonder of the ancient world, the organizers guarantee mainstream news coverage outside the normal combat sports bubble.
Okay, so the venue makes sense as a giant billboard for the region, but the fight itself, how on earth is a kickboxer getting a WBC title shot?
The fight itself is the direct logical conclusion of the modern YouTube and crossover boxing era that started a few years ago.
Ah, the influencer era.
Yeah. The sanctioning bodies and promoters realized that novelty and crossover appeal sell subscriptions just as well as, if not better than, pure competitive merit.
Which is depressing, but true.
Now, as to whether Rico is a threat, Rico Verhoeven is arguably the greatest heavyweight kickboxer of all time.
He's a legend.
He is. He understands distance, timing, and combat psychology at an elite level. But taking away his kicks fundamentally alters his biomechanics in a way that is incredibly difficult to overcome.
Give me like a Blinkist level insight on that. What actually changes in his body mechanics when he switches from kickboxing to boxing?
It comes down to stance and weight distribution. In kickboxing, Rico stands relatively square to his opponent.
Okay.
With his weight distributed evenly or even slightly leaning on his back leg. He has to stand that way so his lead leg is light, allowing him to quickly lift it to block or check incoming leg kicks.
Because if your weight is heavy on the front leg, you can't lift it.
Right, your leg just gets chopped down.
Yeah.
But if you stand like that in a boxing match against a master southpaw like Usyk, you are doomed.
Why?
Because Usyk's bladed boxing stance allows him to step his lead foot outside of Rico's square stance, completely blinding Rico to the incoming left hand.
Oh, wow.
And if Rico tries to adopt a traditional bladed boxing stance, he is fighting years of ingrained muscle memory.
Under pressure, he'll revert back.
Exactly. In a split-second crisis, human beings revert to their deepest training. If Rico gets hurt, he will instinctively try to clinch or square up, and Usyk will just pick him apart with angles.
So it's the spectacle that sells, not the actual parody of the matchup, which brings us directly to Mayweather versus Pacquiao in September.
The ultimate expression of the nostalgia economy.
I love that term, the nostalgia economy. Why do we keep buying into this?
It's fascinating.
In 2015, their first fight broke every financial record in the history of the sport, pulling in over 4.6 million pay-per-view buys. Even if the fight itself was a highly tactical, somewhat slow affair that disappointed casual fans.
Right, it wasn't exactly a brawl.
No. Now, over a decade later, they're doing it again in Las Vegas. Why does this model work?
It works because promoters are no longer selling the physical athletic contest. They are selling a time machine.
A time machine.
It preys on our inherent desire to revisit the past. Fans aren't paying $80 to see the 2026 faded versions of Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao.
No, they're paying for a memory.
Yes. They are paying to feel the way they felt back in 2009 and 2010 when these two men were at the absolute peak of their powers and defining the cultural zeitgeist of sports.
That makes total sense.
The promoters understand that the brand equity of Mayweather versus Pacquiao is so deeply entrenched in the global consciousness that the actual quality of the fight they deliver is entirely secondary to the event of it happening at all.
It is just an endless loop of spectacle returns. But I want to strongly contrast that endless loop of veterans clinging to the spotlight with what Katie Taylor is doing this summer.
Her approach is entirely different and, frankly, a masterclass in how to leave a sport.
It is night and day amidst all these male fighters who refuse to let go, who keep coming back for one more paycheck, one more exhibition, or one more spectacle against a kickboxer.
It gets sad sometimes.
It really does.
Yeah.
But Katie Taylor has firmly and unequivocally announced that she is retiring after a final summer fight in Dublin. She is dictating the terms of her own final exit gracefully in front of her home country.
It is the rarest thing to witness in combat sports.
Truly.
An athlete leaving on their own terms at a time of their choosing, with their physical health intact and their legacy entirely secure. Katie Taylor does not need to chase a spectacle fight against an MMA fighter or a nostalgic rematch a decade too late.
She doesn't need the gimmick.
No. She has already built the foundational architecture of modern women's boxing. Her retiring in Dublin isn't a cynical cash grab, it is a coronation.
A victory lap.
It is a final farewell to a nation that she essentially carried on her back for a decade.
Which provides the perfect transition into our final major topic today. Because the foundation that Katie Taylor built, the sheer standard of excellence she established, has led to a landscape where women's boxing in 2026 is currently setting the gold standard for the entire combat sports industry.
If you look at the matchmaking and the frequency of high-stakes bouts, the structure and execution of women's boxing right now is vastly superior to the men's side.
Let's look at the hard evidence. We just have to look at one single card.
The April 5th card.
Yes, April 5th at the Olympia in London, broadcast live on Sky Sports. Listen to this lineup. Caroline Dubois versus Terry Harper in a world title unification match.
Incredible fight.
Ellie Scottney versus Mayeli Flores for the undisputed super bantamweight crown. Chantel Cameron versus Michaela Kotoskova. And Irma Garcia versus Emma Dolan.
The concentration of talent and consequence on that single night is astonishing.
It is staggering. And that is not even the entirety of the April schedule for women's boxing. We also have Alicia Baumgardner fighting Boomy Ray Shin in New York on April 17th.
Also huge.
And Lauren Price taking on Stephanie Pinheiro Aquino in Wales on April 4th. But focusing back on that April 5th Olympia card, it features more unification and undisputed matches on one single night than we often see in entire quarters, sometimes entire years of the men's boxing schedule.
It highlights a fundamental cultural and structural divergence between how the men's and women's sides of the sport have developed.
Exactly. I look at the men's boxing scene right now with its crossover spectacles at the pyramids, returning retirees in their late 40s headlining arenas, and vacant belts being fought over because superstars vacate to avoid their mandatory challengers.
It's messy.
It feels like a chaotic, manufactured reality television show. But you look at the women's side, it operates like a brutal, high-stakes, uncompromising chess tournament where the champions actually demand to fight the other champion.
They want the best.
Why is the women's side able to deliver this consistently while the men's side is mired in politics?
The answer lies in the historical economics of the sport, believe it or not.
Okay.
The lack of promotional red tape we see in women's boxing today is actually born out of decades of historical marginalization.
Oh, because they didn't have the money early on.
Exactly. For a very long time, women's boxing was completely starved of resources.
Yeah.
They did not have access to the massive, multi-million-dollar exclusive broadcast network deals that allowed male fighters to fight easy, overmatched opponents once a year and still get incredibly wealthy.
That makes sense.
In order for female fighters in the 2010s to make any money, to get on a television broadcast, or to build a marketable brand, they were forced to fight the absolute best available opponent every single time they stepped in the ring.
They couldn't afford to carefully pad their records with 20 easy wins against journeymen.
Precisely. They had to take massive risks just to survive in the sport. And because they survived that way, the culture of women's boxing developed a completely different set of expectations.
It baked competition into the culture.
The expectation among the fighters themselves and the deeply loyal fans who follow them is that unifications, meaning fights where two champions put their respective belts on the line to unify the titles, are the baseline expectation, not a rare exception.
It's the norm.
It is. The major promotional companies, whether it is Sky Sports, Matchroom Boxing, or Top Rank, eventually realized that the unique value proposition of women's boxing lies in its uncorrupted competitive integrity.
So the lack of early money and network exclusivity actually forced the creation of a much healthier, much more competitive ecosystem.
Yes, the adversity built a better system. And now, in 2026, we are living in a golden era because of that foundational culture.
It really is a golden era.
When you see Claressa Shields move up and become undisputed at heavyweight earlier this year, and now you have Ellie Scottney fighting for undisputed status and Dubois and Harper unifying, these athletes aren't hiding behind competing network contracts.
They just want to fight.
The political barriers to making big fights are much lower because the fighters themselves demand the big fights. They understand that undisputed status is the ultimate currency, and they were willing to risk everything to attain it.
It really forces you to respect the path they have forged. They're showing the rest of the combat sports world what this sport is actually supposed to look like. The best fighting the absolute best with no excuses and no hiding behind promotional red tape to prove who is biologically and tactically superior.
Absolutely.
So as we look across this entire chaotic landscape we have explored today, from the purest forms of boxing unifications in London to the surreal tourism-funded spectacle of the Pyramids of Giza, it leads me to a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over.
It's a lot to process.
It really is.
Yeah.
We started today talking about a UFC striker, Chito Vera, voluntarily transitioning to a submission grappling mat just to save his brain and extend his career. We talked about Oleksandr Usyk, a master traditional boxing world champion, preparing to fight a kickboxer at an ancient monument. We've seen heavyweights refuse to retire and women fighting for all the belts on a single night.
The sport is evolving in every direction at once.
It is. Are we witnessing the definitive death of isolated combat disciplines? Think about the fighters of the future. Will the premium athlete of 2036 no longer identify as a strict boxer or a pure mixed martial artist?
That's a fascinating question.
Will they just be a highly specialized combat entertainer? Someone who doesn't just train for one specific sport, but possesses a modular skill set, willing to adapt their biomechanics to whatever bizarre rule set, whatever exotic venue, and whatever spectacle the global market demands that week.
A completely modular athlete.
Yeah. It is a fascinating, potentially terrifying evolution, and it fundamentally changes what it means to be a professional fighter.
It certainly does.
That's it for this episode of Budocast. Thanks for joining us as we break down the latest in martial arts. We'll be back soon with more news, stories, and insights. Until then, train hard, stay humble.